I think at the root of high performance, you really want to find things that that are fun, that you're dying to find out how good you can be. This idea called the effort paradox, which is what psychologists, that's their term for this idea that sometimes we do things not in spite of the fact that they're hard, but because they're hard. That's what gives it meaning. And so the classic example is, why do people climb mountains? It's like, well, oh, it's a beautiful view on top or whatever. It's like, actually, if you look, mountaineers are often taking the hard, they don't just want to get the view. If you offer them an escalator, a gondola to the top, they're like, forget the gondola. I want to climb up the North Face or whatever to get there. And so it's not about the destination. It's about the challenge of getting there and of finding out whether you're capable of meeting that challenge. Same with running a marathon. Like the point isn't to get to the finish line. The finish line is usually like 2 blocks from the start line. You can walk over there if you want. But when you get there, it's not satisfying if you just walked over 2 blocks.
High performance is something that's such a great topic. I know that you've had quite a journey from going from physics to, elite running to now just putting out amazing material, from articles to great books. I have your newest book here, The Explorer's Gene. Talk to me about that path and what motivated you to really get into that high performance mindset.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Well, first of all, it's great to be here. I appreciate you having me on the show. Yeah, high performance. You can use different words for it, but I think that the concept is, I've always liked to push as hard as I can, push my limits, see what I'm capable of. So, looking at a through line from the different things I've done, because physics was very different from journalism, which is very different from running. I've always just really enjoyed the idea of seeing how good I can get at something and taking on big challenges. And that's, that applies at, not to wander too far afield, but it's like every summer I wondered, like, why do I pick these vacations that are quite challenging and hard? And it's like, well, because I love finding out what I'm capable of. And so, yeah, I think at the root of high performance, you really want to find things that that are fun, that you're dying to find out how good you can be.
Yeah, it's super interesting because I think challenging yourself and then watching yourself achieve those goals or get through that next challenge is really valuable. We were talking about one of my sons and his soccer journey. What's really funny is I took him when he was 10 up to Columbus, Ohio for this open tryout, and there were like 300 and something kids out there. And within the first day, he was 10 years old. He was still younger than the majority of the kids out there, but within the first day, he had this feeling that he belonged, and you could see him in the way that he was playing. And he was playing at a higher level with kids that were different than the kids he grew up with. But just that alone, I believe that triggered all of the course ahead of him of just saying, "Oh, I'm interested in this. How do I get to the next level?" And continuously driving for it. I've watched it happen for both of my kids, but it's really interesting to have seen the progression of being challenged and being curious and then pushing yourself to see how far it can take it.
Yeah, and it's, as a parent, obviously, I'm sure you struggle with the same things I struggle with, which is like, I want my kids to love challenge. I want to put challenges, and I want them to discover what they're capable of, which is inevitably more than they think they are. I don't want to like beat them down or create the sense that no matter what they do isn't enough for me. So that's always this it's a delicate dance of trying to create that feeling in other people, to try and have them challenged enough without feeling like, no, you always have to push harder. But I know for me and for my wife, we both of us have been the types of people who just love and feel fulfilled by pushing hard, and so we hope we can instill that in our kids with without them sitting on the therapist couch 20 years from now saying, why did mom and dad push us so hard?
Yeah, I actually had somebody reach out to me today, and we had done a meeting, and they said, "Can I just pick your brain?" And so we did like a 30-minute conversation today. And he has young kids, 3 and 6, and he said, "I'm just curious. You were talking about your boys. What? How did you balance?" The goal of helping them be raised healthy and happy and strong, but also creating such a competitive edge and the things that they're pushing for. And you start to think about it, and there's no recipe that I can look back on. But what I could tell you is my imperfections were very open, and then when I made a mistake, I was very quick to say that I made a mistake. And I feel like that's the way that, there's a part of me that used to drive so hard to results. And what I want my kids to do is the opposite. I always wanted them to focus on the effort. I always wanted them to have fun doing what they were doing, not just worried about the end, but actually enjoying the journey. And to me, that's the fun part of the adventure. And with kids, that's such a hard, if they're wired for competition, that could be a really hard lesson to even push, or even, I don't want to say push, wrong word for parents, but you know what I mean, just to kind of teach.
Yeah, yeah, and like, look, as you said, there's no recipe, and it's every kid's different, every parent's different. When I think about it, about the way my wife and I approach it, the best thing we can do, I think, is to model the approach we want to. And so, my wife and I are both runners, so we still go out and compete. And now, like I turn 50 later this year. When I go out and compete, I lose now. Like I'm not out there winning races. Although, I run age group competitions where I can be competitive. But so what I'm trying to show them is that there's a joy in seeing what I'm capable of today. Um, and it's fun. It's fun when you do well, when you win, when you're on the podium, but it's also fun and rewarding even when you're not. And so I hope that my suffering has meaning, when I'm out there, running a race and getting beat, that my kids see that and they're like, yeah, dad still came home and he was really happy with the months of training that went into this race and the effort he put out, independent of whether he's winning or losing. Which is, look, in life, winning and losing is also, it's a relevant metric. It does matter, but it's not the it's not the it's not the key, or it's not if that's the only thing you're worried about, you're doomed to be unhappy, I think.
Yeah, I think it's part of that. Part of that is just doing hard things. Like you started the conversation off with, like you like to challenge yourself. Do you find that through your research, you've seen a lot of validation that this challenge and this adventure is actually a very positive thing for the development, and it helps you kind of move to that next level along the way, right?
Yeah, and look, this may be a case of me seeking out the research that validates my own approach to life. But yeah, there's what in researching my last book on the kind of exploration, which is fundamentally, why do we put ourselves in uncomfortable situations? Why do we not just get satisfied with where we are? Why do we keep looking for new challenges? The the one strain of research that I found really validating, to be frank, is on this idea called the effort paradox, which is what psychologists, that's their term for this idea that sometimes we do things not in spite of the fact that they're hard, but because they're hard. That's what gives it meaning. And so the classic example is, why do people climb mountains? It's like, well, oh, it's a beautiful view on top or whatever. It's like, actually, if you look, mountaineers are often taking the hard, they don't just want to get the view. If you offer them an escalator, a gondola to the top, they're like, forget the gondola. I want to climb up the north face or whatever to get there. And so it's not about the destination. It's about the challenge of getting there and of finding out whether you're capable of meeting that challenge. Same with running a marathon. Like the point isn't to get to the finish line. The finish line is usually like 2 blocks from the start line. You can walk over there if you want. But when you get there, it's not satisfying if you just walked over 2 blocks. You're running a marathon because it's hard. You're buying furniture from IKEA because it's hard. That, like, researchers have studied that too. Like we value furniture that we've had to struggle with, that we've had to assemble ourselves, more highly than the exact same piece of furniture if we get it pre-assembled. So all of this kind of ties together in a theme that I think is really important for high performance, which is that uh, it's the challenge is what makes it seem meaningful. That I think a lot of I don't want to, I don't know if I can generalize to like most high performers or all high performers. It's like, it's not just about the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It's that they feel alive and they feel a sense of meaning in tackling things that push them to their limits.
I also think that to that point, sometimes pushing ourselves at our limits can also help us achieve that next level or those next goals. So I'll give you something super simple that I talk about a lot on the show, and that's morning routines. with a morning routine. For me, I'm a better husband, a better father, a better friend if I have done the things that make me successful in a day, which are getting my workout in, having a short sauna session, and then I do the cold plunge most days at some point in time in that iteration. And when I'm doing that, it's hard, it's uncomfortable. I don't ever look forward to it, but my body feels better. The recovery helps me feel rejuvenated. I've had a little bit of chaos to calm in my day to start it, and I don't know what it is, but it just feels as I go through the day that I've accomplished something. And when I feel like I've accomplished something, I'm able to push through on so many other things. So I feel like it's like a lever that opens up a whole nother layer of opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I'm a morning runner. Like when I was competing, going, in high school and university, practices were after school, after classes, and I was used. So it's not that I'm incapable or unfamiliar with what it's like to work out at 5 o'clock or whatever. But as soon as I got control of my own schedule, I switched to morning runs, and it's there's a lot of different reasons. One is that if something's important to you and you put it off to the end of the day, then when the day goes sideways, it's like, well, now I don't have time for my workout. It's like, well, that's no good. So I do it first because it's super important to me, but also for the reasons you're talking about. The feel like if I have a tough workout in the morning and I get it done, it's like it'll be, then I have breakfast. It's 8:30 in the morning, and I'm like, well, it doesn't matter what happens today. I've already had a successful day. I've already like slayed the dragon. So I feel like I'm on top of the world, and now I'm confident and ready to tackle the world. Now that you mentioned that it that doesn't mean that you are like always eager to suffer in the morning, that you're like, it still takes a kind of activation energy to get there. And that's where, you mentioned the idea of routines. And so that it's so crucial. And so like when I talk to people who are maybe trying to take up, let's say, running or something like that, it's almost, I sometimes forget how hard it is if you have to decide every morning what you're going to do. If you're like, you wake up in the morning, it's like, should I run now? Well, this running's going to be hard and it's going to be unpleasant. Maybe I should not run. So for me, like, it's been 30 years or whatever, there is no like, should I do this? I'm still like, oh boy, this is going to be hard. But it's like, it's just like, it's routine. I know what I do in the morning. I know how it makes me feel. And so there's no mental energy required to do that. So I really encourage people to figure out what's going to get them going, and don't make it too daunting at the beginning. Don't start with like a 18-step process to get ready for the day, but figure out what's going to be good for you. Do it, and then do it long enough that eventually it's no longer optional, because then you don't have to waste your time or waste your mental energy convincing yourself. It's just what you do.
How important is self-awareness in that process? How important is it to know yourself so that you're setting yourself up for success within those boundaries?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I mean, like, I when I think of my what I consider to be my most sort of powerful habits, or my most, I can't say that, when I was 15 I was like, yeah, I've got to establish a running habit so that I'll be a happy, successful, middle-aged guy. um there wasn't a lot of self-awareness. I was at that point, I was, I think this is true for a lot of things, especially for people in sport. It's like, you start out and you think you're doing it just because you want to win the game, win the race, win the girl, whatever your motivation is. And for me, I think the epiphany was when I guess I was 21. I injured my knee, and at that point, all I cared about was running. And I had a knee injury that kept me out for almost 2 years, and I was sad about it for a lot of reasons, as you can imagine. Um, but eventually, I actually realized, I sort of came to terms with, oh, this is altering the trajectory of what I hoped would be my career. But then eventually, I actually just miss running. I miss the way it makes me feel. I miss, like, independent of the external validation that it gave me. And so that kind of flipped something for me, and I became more aware of, like, okay, I'm doing this for reasons that have to do with, um, that go beyond winning a race, but that have to do with how I feel as a person, what I accomplish as a person, and that helps. So I think, like, look, self awareness is great, um, but we don't always have to know where we're going. We can sometimes be guided by, this seems like a good idea, and it seems like I like it. So I'm going to go with this, and I'm going to see where it takes me. And I'm going to see if, but eventually, every once in a while, you have to take stock of like, where am I? Am I going in the direction that I want to go? You don't want to be on autopilot the whole way. And I think sorry, this is a rambling answer, but
No, I like it. I like the rambling answer. You're fine. I'm following completely.
there's a book that's a cult classic among runners called Once a Runner, written back in the 70s by a guy named John L. Parker Jr., which is kind of a wish fulfillment kind of book about a college miler. But it also turns out to be a very deep reflection on what it means to be a runner. And one of the points he makes in there is, so he's sort of thinking dismissively of the, philosopher runners in Runner's World writing about, the deep insights they're getting on their runs, and saying, yeah, that stuff's great, but he's not thinking about it. He doesn't wake up every morning to meditate on whether this is taking him towards nirvana. He gets up and gets it done. So, your question was about how self-aware you have to be. And I think there's a place for self-awareness, but there's also a time for just like deciding, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm not going to worry about it for the next 6 months, next year. I'm just going to do this, and I'm not going to get caught up in waves of self-reflection. So yeah, that's a very equivocal answer, but it's like, self-awareness is important, but sometimes you just got to do what you got to do.
Do it. Yeah. There's a reason why Nike's saying is just do it, right? I mean, sometimes we just have to do it, let go of the expectation, let go of the result, and just see where we end up. And if we're doing the right disciplined action, we know that it's better than not doing it at all. And then it will start to lead us into that occurrence. I asked about self-awareness because I find personally that when I put too many hurdles in front of working out, I've never been a runner. I can run all day on a soccer field, but running individually has never been my favorite thing to do. But working out alone is something I really enjoy. And it's kind of the same separation you hear the runner describe, where it's almost a meditation. I'm not having to make any major decisions. I'm fully focused where I'm at. I'm fully present. I can't be anywhere else. And there's just this release of endorphins and excitement that I enjoy doing it. Now, when I finish that, like you said, I feel like I've owned the day. I go to bed earlier. So many other so many other habits start to fall into place because of just doing it, of just moving. And so I really like that. But my self-awareness is, I had to start with a personal trainer because I knew I would not let someone else down. So that was a very simple way to build the habit, because having been a soccer player, I thought, oh, I'll just play soccer and and I say soccer player, I didn't play into college, but I always played, but I was playing like weekend warrior stuff, and you're not getting enough workouts to stay in shape that way. You can't just go out on Saturday and play with the guys and expect to be good again. And so the personal trainer gave me accountability. And then the closer it was, the better I was. And so over the years, that awareness has allowed me to just do it. But it was a simple thought. So I like the way you answered it.
And I think that's interesting, because you dialed into what you needed, what your hurdle was to get into the regular workouts. And I think, if we're talking like exercise more generally, which is a huge problem, like as a health, let's say as a sports and exercise health journalist, I spend a lot of time writing about, like, should you do this exercise or that exercise? Is that going to make you live longer? Is that going to make you healthier or whatever? And this sort of what's ignored, the elephant in the room, is like, you just need to do something. God damn it. And most of us struggle with like the big struggle is getting people to exercise. And so where self-awareness comes into this is like, if you're not exercising, what is it that's keeping you from exercising? And we have stories that we tell ourselves, but those stories are not necessarily true. And I think having the self-awareness, as you did, to figure out, what is the barrier for me? Is it feeling accountability to someone else? Is it time? We all tell ourselves we're too busy. We all sit on our devices tapping away and surfing the web while saying, no, I don't have 20 minutes to exercise 3 times a week. So having the self-awareness to understand what the true barriers are, and they're different for each of us, is the best way to figure out how to address them. Because otherwise you keep telling yourself you're too busy, when really what's going on is that you hate the exercise that you're doing, or you're a social person who needs to do something with other people, or whatever the case may be.
You've been writing in this category for a long time. What are you noticing? Are you finding that there's a trend upward or downward, would you say, as far as exercise? In some ways, it seems like there's more awareness and more um, direction. We're seeing alcohol consumption dropping with the next generation. We're seeing some healthier options appear. But I'm curious, from the journalist standpoint, are you seeing or feeling like it's adjusting and moving in the right direction, or are we still at a tipping point that needs to shift?
I do think it's moving in the right direction, or at least move. I think it's a palpable change in the number of people who are interested in or concerned with their health and general physical condition. That um, and probably that's partly a reflection of the fact that 20 years ago I was in my 20s, and now I'm in my 40s, and so I think once people get you feel invincible when you're in your 20s. So when my friends were all in their 20s, I look around and feel like, don't these people care about like what how can they be getting by on like 5 hours of sleep a week, and going out drinking 4 nights a week or whatever. But I think that's not just me getting older. I think it's a societal shift. I think there's a big shift towards optimization, um, health optimization, and lifestyle optimization more generally. Is it actually making us healthier? I think a little bit. I think for sure that the average, there are more people doing things in an attempt to be healthy than there were 20 years ago. I think we've still got a long way to go. I think there's just big challenges in like the food environment and the convenience environment. And I think I guess what my big picture take would be, there's a very human desire for, um, shortcuts is maybe a pejorative way of putting it, but a human desire for like, tell me the answer, tell me the pill to take, tell me the one neat trick that I need to do, or the five neat tricks that I need to do, and then I'll be healthy. Which I think is maybe my personal take is, yeah, really just like move more, like get a bunch of exercise and eat stuff that doesn't come in a package, and that'll do more than some of the sort of optimization, like uh, the sort of the hack, the kind of hack culture. So I think it's a net positive. I think it's better to be thinking about and worrying about health than not. Um, but I think sometimes we get distracted by the shiny stuff instead of just the basic getting the work done.
Yeah, I feel like everybody starts from behind. So the other thing I notice is, my oldest son's in college, and you go to drop him off at college, and I noticed that the college campus looks so different from when I was there comparatively. And so I feel like the last 15 to 20 years, the generation has been pumped with all these high sugar, high processed, awful types of foods, and they could be working out, they could be doing these things, but the minute they stop, they have this habit that they have to break, that's very difficult to break. The snacking and and healthy snacking is different than unhealthy snacking, but most of it tends to be the junk food. And I feel like so many of our children are starting a race with 50-pound backpacks on their backs. And so when they're trying to start to get in shape, it's a much more difficult challenge than it's supposed to be.
I agree. I would say, I think you said your older son's at Radford, and I've been there. I've eaten in the cafeteria, and it's like, I compare it to when I went to university in 1993. I can't even, I don't have words to describe how bad the food was in residence in my first year. Like the quality and the quantity were just atrocious. We didn't have all you can eat. And we used to have track practice till like 6:55, and then the dining hall would close at 7. So we would rush over there and have like 5. Anyway, I don't need to get into my personal grievance with
Yeah, I get it.
with my resident experience, but it's like now I go to these dining halls, and I've been to a bunch of university dining halls in the recent decades, and it's like, wow, this is a whole different world. There is in often there are better options available. There are like nice looking salads, but it's right next to the burger bar and the pizza bar and the everything else bar, the fried chicken bar, and so I think, yeah, students are bombarded with choice. They're bombarded with, and most of those choices are maybe not super optimal, especially if they move from being athletic to into a real life. So yeah, I think that the sort of the food environment, and then also like just the culture, the environment of like, is life set up so that you need to drive everywhere, or is it set up so that you can conveniently bike to work or whatever? um, People are behind. Kids, and I look at, I happen to live in the house that I grew up in Toronto, and so I have a real like basis of comparison of looking out the window, and it's like when I was a kid, these streets were packed with kids walking and biking to school. Um, Now, not so much. The distances haven't changed, but there's a lot of kids getting rides to school. Just and so then it just the norms of what's normal, or the we fight the battle as all parents do of trying to get our kids to eat healthily, and just the norms of what they come back to say. Yeah, but my friends at school, what they're having for lunch is X, Y, and Z. It's like, yeah, but X, Y, and Z is terrible. And they're like, yeah, but that's what everyone else is having, and it's very hard to push back against that. It's hard as a kid to be different, to be munching on carrots when everyone else is munching on gummy bears.
It is. It's funny though, because so many of my friends, even the friends that believe in healthy habits, don't often follow it with their children. And so it's like if you know something is, and again, excuse me, my wife and I are just as guilty as everybody else. So I'm not here on a high horse. We have definitely allowed our children to make their own decisions. They both eat just about anything you put in front of them, but they have their own habits that they've built as they've gotten older, especially as athletes that facilitate the result they want. And but if you really look at it and you see it as bad of a resource as it could be, and how far behind it can put you, it's a little challenging, and I always struggle because coming from an Italian family where food was everything. I mean, I couldn't walk into my grandmother's house. I could have just eaten the largest dinner with dessert that you can ever imagine, and my grandmother would not let me sit down if I didn't have something in my hand to eat. It had to be a cookie, a sandwich, and until I said yes, it was not good. It was never going to stop. And I'm very grateful. That was how she showed love. I missed that. But at the end of the day, that culture is one where you're feeding all of the feelings. It's how you feel. And oh, you're sad. Just here, eat a piece of cake or whatever it is. I'll make you feel better. And it's very challenging to get to grow up and then to avoid it. So I've avoided it by basically keeping it out of the house. And if it's not in the house, I'm good. If it's in the house, I'll struggle. So again, self awareness.
Yeah, no, that's been my policy too. It's like I'll eat anything. I'll eat anything, but I will. The way I try and control is I won't buy it. So, and I find, and this is what I'm trying to convey to my kids. It's like, yeah, we don't buy, this kind of candy or that kind of candy or this, but you will eat it like 4 times a week anyway. You just by being in the world, you're going to have plenty. And it's like when I was a kid, we never had a video game system, but I played all the video games. I played them at my friend's house. Because I only played them at my friend's house, it meant I only played like 8 hours a week instead of 80 hours a week. And so I wasn't totally excluded, even though I sucked at them, but I didn't end up spending my adolescence just playing video games. And like there's a doctor here in Canada, an obesity doctor named Yoni Friedhoff, who has written a lot about uh, the environment we create for kids. And one of his crusades or hobby horses is, why does everything in a kid's life have to be celebrated with absolute crap sugar-filled food. It's like, hey, you lost a tooth, let's give you like an angel food cake. Hey, you didn't fail your test, let's celebrate. And it's collective too, so kids, like, it's not just birthday parties, it's like every, like, hey, it's Friday, you can all have freezies and you can have cupcakes at school. It's like, what? Like, so it is very pervasive. And so you can't, well, I don't want to be, too pessimistic, but it's hard to change the culture by yourself, but you can try and set norms for your kids, of that. And I think sports, like, sounds like for your kids, and I'm hoping for my kids too, sports is one way to push back against that, in the sense that you can make the argument that you're spending X hours a week training for this thing. You say you want to be really good. You say you want to be the best. If you're going to eat that, and that's going to be your breakfast, then you're not going to be your best. You're not going to have energy. You're not going to get strong. You're not going to stay healthy. And so, we try to use that as a lever for, to encourage, to make them understand that, yeah, you're not going to die if you eat a cupcake right now, but it's like, if you want to be at your best, if you want to be a high performer in the thing that you've said you want to be a high performer at, then paying attention to nutrition is going to make sense.
Yeah, and if you're in that upper echelon and you're truly competing at the highest level, those little details are the only difference between good and great. I mean, that can be the smallest differential of the fuel you put into the body when you're hitting that last quarter mile in that mile race, or you're trying to run at the end of the game of a soccer game and your legs are now wobbly and tired, but you don't have enough fuel to get through the last quarter of the game. And those are the things that are really, really powerful. And I think, to your point, sports kind of gives a reason why it's a good idea to do these things. And sometimes that now allows you to be different, but you're also different around a bunch of other people that are like you. So a lot of other friends are doing it with you. So your circle, this pulls up the benefit of the circles, right? Like, who you surround yourself with can often lead you to some of the best or worst decisions of your life.
Absolutely. And to be clear, like, being healthy and fit and well nourished, it's important for it, like any number, like, it's important to be the best physicist you can be, or the best entrepreneur you can be, or the best whatever but it's, sports gives you something quantifiable, where it's like, yeah, that the last quarter of the game, you had four turnovers because you were exhausted, because you didn't eat properly, you didn't really eat a good breakfast, you didn't eat, like, it's kind of a laboratory for the rest of life, that can help kids. It's more easy to understand why being properly fueled is important for a high energy game of soccer than it is to understand why it's important for being creative or being driven in other aspects of life.
Yeah, I want to go back to something else you said, and it just slightly changes the subject, but it's so powerful. Growing up in Toronto in the same house that you live in now, that you grew up in, and watching people that used to ride bikes and walk and see that. I've seen you talk about this in other places, but I'd love our audience to just hear a little bit of the dynamic, and that is the sense of adventure and the timeline of, going back 50, 60, 70 years and looking at the amount of space that someone would cover during that time. And I think one quick story is that I remember riding my bike everywhere growing up, and I had a neighborhood that had all these streets that were connected, and I just had a boundary of Independence Parkway and Virginia Beach Boulevard. They were two very big, like, big places. As long as I stayed in between those, I was good. And at seventh grade, I remember, for the first time, I was like, this boundary is too small. And I crossed Independence Boulevard. I went to the mall. I bought a book, Intro to French, because I thought I was going to take French the next year in eighth grade. And I still have that book today. And I remember it as like this breaking point of me passing a boundary that had been set. I had never asked again what my boundaries were. I'd never asked if it was okay to cross that as I got older. I just kept the boundaries because they gave me a really wide boundary. But
Yeah.
I found it so interesting that your research kind of showed you this pretty cool thing that most people probably aren't thinking about, but are very fully aware of.
Yeah, there's a whole field of research on what's called home ranges for children, which is where are they allowed to roam. And I think the most vivid example, there's a study looked at four generations of a single family in, I think it was Sheffield, England. So the great grandfather, the grandfather, the mother, and the kid. And when they were like 6 years old, I think it was. And the great grandfather in like 1919 was allowed to go 6 miles to a fishing hole. And like, so this 6 year old is just heading over 6 miles away. And they didn't have money for like streetcar fare. So he's like walking or biking, probably biking 6 miles on his own to go fishing. The, the, uh, the grandfather, I think he was allowed to go, I don't know, a mile or two in the local neighborhood to a nearby forest and play there. And the grandmother, by this time it was the mother rather, in the 70s, was allowed to go half a mile to the local pool. And then the kid at the time this study was done, which was like 2009, the current 6 year old was allowed to go basically half a mile to the end of it, or 300 yards to the end of his street. And the thing is, he didn't do it much because when he went out on the street, there's no other kids there. There's no one to play with. There's nothing to do. There's traffic, and I think this, this is, I'm sure this um, rings familiar to a lot of people listening, that this is the kind of trajectory of how things have changed. And there's a lot, and there's a parallel body of research which connects. Like you go and ask parents, okay, or kids, yeah, as kids or parents, like, what is this kid allowed to do? Are they allowed to cross streets by themselves? Are they allowed to go more than X blocks from home? Are they allowed to go into a store by themselves? So it's basically they're independent. There's a scale of like independence or permissions, and the more independence and permissions they have, you can then draw a line between that and like their BMI 10 years later. It's like kids who are allowed to move and roam get in the habit of exploring, moving, having autonomy, and better mental health than if they're kind of locked in, forced to stay within a narrow range. And there can be a lot of reasons for that. It can be the physical side. It's also like, I think there's a really important concept called risk scaffolding, where it's like, if you're out there in the world, you're going to deal with small risks of like, I'm crossing this street. I'm 6 years old. It's a little scary. There's cars coming. I need to figure out how to do it. And like, I don't want to downplay the negative side of getting hit by a car, but, or you're in a playground and you're like, can I jump down from this? Like, has your playground been de-risked? So it's like basically a bunch of grass, or is there a jungle gym where you might fall and break your wrist? And as kids learn to navigate these little risks, they gradually learn to deal with bigger risks and deal with anxiety, such that when they become big kids and the world is complicated, they kind of have the mental tools in place to face anxiety and uncertainty and risk. So anyway, all these things are tied into this idea of letting kids explore, and it's tricky. I apologize again for rambling, but I was just driving down the street yesterday, coming home from somewhere, and my wife and I noticed there's a new stop sign at the top of about a block away from our house, and we had both written to the city requesting this stop sign because on our kids' route to the school, which is about a mile away, there's just one intersection where there's no crossing guard and there's a blind. It's like a hill, no visibility. Cars zoom up, and the kids have to cross it. And so part of letting kids be mobile, compared to when I was a kid, there was no stop sign there, but there were fewer cars. Now there's more cars, people zooming around. So we're trying to help encourage the city, create an environment where it's okay to let kids go wandering, and things will go wrong. Like my 9-year-old, we sent her over to a friend's yesterday and told her to be home by 5, and she got home at 7. And like, we were pissed, but
Yeah.
the world didn't end. Like, that's how she's gonna, making those mistakes is how she's going to learn how to do it. So anyway, this is all hard stuff, but it's like, it is, because I'm living in the same house, I really have this basis of comparison. It's like, no, it was the same walk to school that I did. And so it's like, I know they can do it because I did it for 8 years.
Yeah, there's such a concern now for safety and awareness, but there's also this helicoptering that's happened, that's in some ways has built the anxious generation. And when you look at the inability to create adventure, to feel success, I mean, I felt like $1,000,000 that day. I felt a little guilty that I made the decision I did, because I knew the boundary wasn't supposed to be crossed. But I also then shared it with my mom. I was like, hey, I just want to tell you I crossed this road. And she's like, you're old enough to cross that road as long as you know what you're doing. And it was such a sense of freedom that you get and success that I do think it reciprocates into so many other things. But I mean, I have friends that live around the corner that wouldn't let their kids ride the bike around to our house, and it was like a block away. And it's there's a little bit of our own insecurities and challenges that we have to let go of too. But some of it comes to safety, and some of it comes to just allowing us to expand our horizon of adventure for our children, not just ourselves, right?
Yeah, and it like look, risks are real, and I'm a very risk averse person, and so I'm lucky to have a wife who uh, is much more willing to give the kids autonomy. So I love my kids so much that I want to like do everything for them, make everything perfect. And my wife will be like, we'll let them, we'll let them make breakfast. We'll make them make their own breakfast, and we'll see what happens. Like, so what if they get peanut butter on the ceiling? It's like, we'll deal with it. And so we have that push pull. It's kind of like it plays out in the dynamic. It plays out in my head, like risk versus opportunity, give them a chance to explore. But what if something goes wrong? And in our parenting, we get that dynamic too. And I'm really grateful to have a wife who makes sure that I don't let my desire for safety overwhelm their need uh, for victories, for the chance to explore and the chance to make mistakes. So but in no way do I mean to say that it's all obvious or we should just let our kids do everything, anything, and everything. But just as there's a risk of falling off a playground structure and breaking a wrist, there's a risk in never being in that situation where you climb the playground structure and you just sit like in your living room and don't like, there are very real risks to not learning how to be in the world.
Well, to your point, Alex, when I told you earlier in our conversation that my youngest son moved up, 3, 4 hours away, and he's living in a new place, and he's 14 years old. Literally, week one, he gets on a scooter, rides it to the local coffee shop, brings his computer, has a coffee, is sitting at 14 years old. He's sitting in the coffee shop and he texts me a message, living the college life, but he spelled college collage. And it's one of my all-time favorite moments of my wife and I were extremely distraught, like very challenged with the decision to let him move and to start over. Luckily, we have a great family who's helping him and has really become a second set of parents. But he was like, I can't sit in this house all day, and I'm going to do some schoolwork, and he does it on his own. And so watching him be a young adult so quickly and do all of his laundry, make all of his food, go up to, a local grocery store and shop for himself. I mean, he'll call us on FaceTime and be like, "Hey, which kind do I get?" But like these things, watching a young child, I can tell you right now, my oldest did not do these things because we did them all for him. That's just the way it is. Can he? Absolutely. It also was a little validation. I'm prattling a little bit now, but it was also a little validation on us as parents where frankly, I looked at my wife and I was like, I am so proud just of who he raised, of the fact that he feels comfortable and secure enough to do these things. And it's really interesting. I would not have thought that he would have been able to do everything that he's done. And he actually starts driving tomorrow morning. His license is valid, so he has the
Ooh.
car. It's been waiting there, and so you talk about letting go. He's like, "Can I just drive today?" We're like, "Nope, you can drive tomorrow when it's legal." And but now he has a new level of freedom, and I've my wife and I have these same conversations. It's like, hey, he can drive himself to practice, he can drive himself here, and we're learning as we go. But that freedom, I mean, I'm so amazed at how it was. The collage life is still one of the greatest texts I've ever received in my life.
And it is so like kids are capable of so much more than we might assume. And like, so the difference between my wife and I is, yeah, I grew up, my parents made my lunch every day of school and high school. I went to university and I'm like, okay, now I'm going to learn how to do stuff. And I did fine. But then my wife was like, I was making my own lunch in grade 5. I was like baking chicken breasts for the week and then making lunches at it in grade 5. I didn't even know what a stove was, and she was doing her own laundry and stuff. So look, our parents both had different approaches. They both loved us, but it's uh, I I'm impressed by discovering how much like a 14-year-old actually can do if you give them the opportunity, and you back them up and you're there for them if they need it. But giving them freedom is, it has amazing consequences.
Well, and I would like to say slightly coddled to that point. So I think the one caveat I'd like to make is, again, when you grow up, my boys would throw their laundry on the floor, and I would tell my wife, please don't pick it up. Let them pick it up, put it in the basket. And she's like, no, 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 I'll just pick it up. And guess where it ends up? It ends up on the floor next to the basket instead of in the basket. So the more things that, those are little things that I was really good at, because I had to do a lot of that on my own. But my mom made every lunch and made every bread. She would wake up and make me crepes in the morning before school in high school. So,
Nice.
by the time I got to college, I had this expectation that I needed to have this kind of meal every day. So it did drive me to teach myself to do those things. Um, but watching the children kind of go through that is really, really validating. But it all goes back to that sense of adventure, to feeling their way out, learning new pathways that they're successful in. I have another follow up to this kind of conversation point, and that is, with AI doing so much of the critical thinking and deep thinking today, how do you feel that is? Have you thought about or researched anything on the impact of AI to this sense of adventure and creative thinking?
So I am worried about it in the sense, I mean, I think even going back before I think there's this sort of sense of algorithms are giving us what we want, what we need, telling us what to explore intellectually, all that sort of thing. And I think there's something very passive about that form of exploration of like, what music am I going to listen to next? It's whatever the algorithm told me to. What am I going to watch next? Whatever so I think it takes away a little bit of uh, what kids traditionally have had, which is the ability to tune into, what do I want to do? Do I, I'm here at this playground. I've already gone down the slide twice. I want to go up the slide now. And kids will are very good at following that voice of, for better or worse, they're very good at figuring out what they want to do. I think there's something lost you're when our explorations are uh, guided by a probabilistic computer algorithm that's just trying to figure out what will give us the illusion that we're following our interests. AI takes it up a notch, and there's a little bit of preliminary research just sort of showing things that are fairly predictable, like if you write an essay on your own versus if you have AI write an essay, or the intermediate step of like, you're going to have AI collect the research for you and then you're going to write it. A month later, the person who wrote the essay themselves is going to remember a lot more of that and have a better understanding of the topic they wrote about than the person who just had AI gather up the research and then they put it in order. So, I think there's dangers. I think there's something lost. I think I think in some sense it's people of my generation or our generation that will notice this the most, because in the same way that it's like, I don't think of Google as like short circuiting my ability to research, but for people who went to college in the 80s, they might think, what do you mean you didn't have to go to the library and actually dig up the hard copies of these papers? So things change, and so I don't necessarily think it's like an existential threat, but I guess the way I think of it is, over time, labor saving devices allowed us to use our bodies a lot less. And we eventually realized that, not that we're like, therefore, we're not going to use these labor saving devices. I'm going to go and like, make fire every night by knocking two stones together. But that I need to find other ways of using my body. Otherwise, I'm going to be less healthy and less happy and so on. I think as AI continues to encroach on critical thinking, I think we're going to recognize that, boy, that's not a path to happiness. if we, not having to do critical thinking. So I think whether it's that we'll take up more engaging hobbies that force us to keep using our critical think abilities, or whether it's like people will do what I'm doing right now, which is like, I'm going to pretend AI doesn't exist, and I'm just going to keep, writing articles based on actually reading the papers, and following it because I find that more satisfying. Maybe that'll be a dinosaur approach, but one way or another, we're gonna realize that we have to use our brains, and if we don't, for those who choose not to, it's going to be just as unhealthy and unsatisfying as those who choose not to get off the couch.
Yeah, I think we're a part of this. We're within a couple years of each other, so we're a part of that really unique generation where we grew up without any of the technology, but then we grew up in the adult world with all the technology. So we had. I got intro to email when I went to college the first time, the DOS based email, and
Yeah.
I have prepaid calling cards I was using to be able to call home, and then within a year it was free long distance through the cell phone anywhere you wanted to call. And like, it was, the world changed so rapidly. I think the unique thing is maybe our kids that are in that teenage to next college age right now are going through the same transformation we went through in the 90s, and the I guess, yeah, the 90s and early 2000s, where things just skyrocketed in a whole new direction. And there are unique things that I think came out of it that really drove deeper value on other items that maybe even exercise. If you think about exercise, the service based industries, you are doing jobs where you're sitting in a desk all day versus being active and in a trade. And so it required a deeper knowledge base of exercise. And I use AI all the time now. And it's like it's a way to like take an idea and pop it in there and just start thinking differently and start challenging it and challenging myself and getting curious. And then I keep all these boxes of these ideas that I can go back to. But maybe the benefit, my prattle here again, Alex, but maybe the benefit is that people more are reading more. Maybe it's the resurgence of the imagination. Maybe articles and magazines become the thing that we want to look at because it slows us down versus just constant productivity and noise.
I,
So who
I think that's
knows?
an interesting point. And I will say, I can remember 20, more than 20, 20, 22, 23 years ago. I have an aunt of who I'm very close with who was an academic. And she was just appalled at this idea that people were using Google and Wikipedia to work on their essays. And I was like, you know what? Google and Wikipedia are amazing resources. I would never cite Wikipedia as or anything from Google as a final like reference, but boy, they introduce me, they lead me, they tell me what paths to follow.
Right.
I can dig up the original sources, and that's effectively how I've worked as a journalist. I use Wikipedia and I use Google all the time, and so it's not the tool is not good or bad. How you use it determines what you're going to get out of it. And I think I have lots of friends who use AI extensively and try to use it thoughtfully, and use it to stimulate creativity. In the same, you can make a parallel kind of have a parallel discussion about stuff like GPS and turn by turn directions. And on the one hand, I kind of argue in my book, like it's problematic if you never know where you are anymore and you're just following turn by turn directions. This affects your brain in ways that are actually potentially serious. Your hippocampus is going to shrink. But then other people will push back and say, GPS and turn by turn directions has freed me to explore way more. I can be in a strange city and I can go wandering because I know that I won't get permanently lost. I can just look at my phone and find my way back. So the same technology can constrict exploration or it can expand it. And I think AI is going to follow that pattern. It's going to be a question of how we use it and what we use it for that determines the extent to which it's like a wonderful new thing versus a path to perdition.
Well, I'm the latter person that without the Google Maps, I would not know where I am. And so it did allow me, because I'm very peripheral, but I'm not always, I don't have that sense of direction, like unless I absolutely have to in survival type base. So I remember I got so lost so many times when I started driving because I would get involved in the song I was listening to, or later in life, the conversation you're talking on the phone on. And when the maps came up, it allowed me to be more focused. I saved so much time from not getting lost. It's a big win. And I do explore and go so many other places I never would. But how we use those tools, if we're using them instead of our own brain or instead of growing with them, it's probably holding us back. And that could be a major challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. They can be a tool for growth, or they can be a crutch that allows us to stop using our own capacities. And you want to choose option A.
Well, Alex, I love your journalism. I'm grateful to have you on the show. I have a copy of The Explorer's Gene right here for our people that are watching this on YouTube. And I hope everybody goes out and buys your other book is Endure. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
And then where can they find you? What's the best way to connect and follow you into the future?
Yeah, probably the best place to find me is at my website, alexhutchinson.net. It has links to various socials. I'm never sure which social media network is about to implode, or the currently one to be on. So yeah, alexhutchinson.net. I write for Outside Magazine, so you can find columns there roughly once a week. But yeah, that's a good place to start.
Well, thanks for joining us on the show. It's been an honor to have a great interview and a great conversation.
Thanks, Scott. Really enjoyed the conversation.
I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you liked it, there's more where this one came from. Click here and enjoy some more.